All right, it is the government that regulates this externalities. So let's talk about some of the different methods they can use. First, we'll talk about their market-based options. There are 5 of them. Number 1 is an emissions charge. An emissions charge is paying for how much pollution you put out. The idea here is to take that private cost that you had and try to force the external back into it so that your marginal cost is representative of what's really there. The idea is to bear the full social cost. That's the idea behind it. Forced recycling of materials. I don't know how many of you recycle, but it is something that's mandatory in many areas. The city of Parkersburg has mandatory recycling. The county of Wood County is now looking at that. There's user fees. I don't know if you've heard of a user fee before. It is a charge for consumption. The easiest example of this would be your gasoline tax. Gasoline taxes are put on things to pay for road construction because the assumption is those who buy the most gas are traveling the most, therefore wearing the road out the most. So that's a user fee. There are things like green taxes. Green taxes are put into curb consumption. An easier way to think about a green tax, though, is probably the idea of sin taxes. Things like taxes on tobacco and alcohol. The idea is to raise the price up so that people will stop using them. That's the same idea with green taxes. You take a heavily polluting material and try to tax it so people will stop using it. And then as a last resort, there's pollution fines. The EPA can come in and just fine a company. These are all market-based options. The idea being they change the cost structure. Okay? But that's not the only way to go. This next one sounds a little strange when you first hear it, but it will work. And this is the idea of tradable pollution permits. Okay. Before you start laughing at my little drawings here, let's just stick with what I'm trying to say. Let's say we have 4 power plants. Some of them are newer, some of them are older. The government would come out and say, all right, we'll allow 1,000 metric tons of pollution to be provided throughout the entire industry. And let's say this guy here, each of them get 250 to start. But let's say this plant's newer. It only needs to use 200. It can take its 50 that are remaining and sell it to one of the other plants. It's like using the carrot instead of the stick. You're giving these guys an incentive to become cleaner. That way they can profit by selling to the older plants. Now, the government is going to look at the industry as a whole. They're going to say 1,000 tons. Here in a little while, they'll come back and they'll say 900. They'll keep making the entire industry reduce, but no in particular plant. The reason for that is it allows these guys to become more and more efficient, better at doing it, and ability to profit from selling those. That's the idea behind tradable pollution permits. It promotes sales and profit. It's dangling that carrot out there to them. Allows them to figure out how to do it. It is not a right to pollute that they're purchasing. It is the incentive to get clean that we're looking at there. Next one they give you is a command and control option. This is one of the worst ways to do anything. It is to tell somebody exactly what you want and how you want them to do it. The problem with that is if you tell them what you want and how you want it to do it, that is exactly what you'll get. You'll never get anything better. Never tell people exactly how to do things. When you do that, you stamp out any innovation. We never get better at it. We just do exactly what we're told. So that's one that we try to stay away from. And that really comes from central planning. If you guys recall, that's communism. So when it comes down to the end of this chapter, what they're talking about, the reason it's an economic issue, it's really a cost-benefit analysis. And it brings us to this idea of this optimal rate of pollution, which sounds phenomenally unbelievable. But there is actually an optimal rate of pollution that exists. And that is where the marginal benefit of pollution abatement, the word abatement just meaning elimination, should be equal to the marginal cost of pollution abatement. How much are you willing to trade? If you want a cleaner environment, we have to give up some housing, some parks, some of these types of other benefits that are out there. So we have to make trade-offs. It really comes down to a cost-benefit analysis. And if you tell these power plants that they are to have zero emissions, who do you think is going to pay for that? It's going to be the customer. So be very careful how much you ask for, because ultimately the customer pays the bill. Okay, that's chapter 28.